next D is democratization, right? Everybody has a voice, right? We can now have, like we saw in either the Arab Spring or in different uprisings we've seen around the world, or even in the way in which Silicon Valley got together and campaigned to have the SOPA law, how it resulted in that act not moving forward. It came at grassroots. It used brand new channels. And people who didn't have a voice before, unless they went to city council chambers on a Monday night, late at night, and sat through it and tried to talk through the issue, unless they did that, there was no other way to express your point of view. And it was difficult to get noticed. Today we can collectively have a broad point of view and really make real change. We talked about data, right? Another D, the fourth D. And particularly we talked about the sheer scale of the data that we're storing and what that means. How when you have vast repositories of data on a subject, you can now apply interesting algorithms like mathematics against that data and figure out trends, figure out patterns. What does it tell us about who we are and what we do every day and how we can do things better? How we can look at the electrical grid, right, and determine how can we have better utilization of power. You know, with a smart grid, we can tell an enormous amount about every single house and how it uses power, right? And in aggregate, you take all that information, and now you can tell, you can make sort of city and state and federal decisions about the distribution of power so it's more efficient. The fifth one was demographics, right? This shift, this big shift. We talked about aging populations, and we didn't say this, but there's areas of the world where populations are growing rapidly. That means the centers of power may change, and the needs of the world will certainly change. Another area here that I didn't talk about that I think for this audience is interesting is the significant rise in the impact and influence of women in society. Right, we're seeing a real shift. More women are going to university now than men. Right, more women have decision-making over purchasing decision than men for the first time. It's a real shift, a real paradigm shift. And so, you know, if you're in marketing or you're in product development, that's very important to know. That's a redistribution of our demographics based on where we're at and where we're headed. And the sixth one I talked about was debt, right? Debt wasn't something that was in my presentation historically. I added it because it was clear to me as I looked at the information that was going to be a big part of our future. As that number got close to 16 trillion. That's really quite a number. And you saw how $50,000 is, if we wanted to pay that off, each of us would have to come up with a check for $50,000. Well, we will have to in some way. It might not be a check, but it might be in diminished services or a lower quality of life at some point. We got to figure that out. And so the seventh one, the seventh one is sort of the bonus, right? What's this all mean? This really means disorientation, right? The best way I can think of disorientation is in the post-World War II era, right? Europe was devastated, and so was a good chunk of Southeast Asia. The two sort of big power centers, in addition to America, sort of in the mid part of the 20th century. And when those countries and those areas were in bad shape, well, they had to spend a lot of time rebuilding, right? In the meantime, America, apart from the unfortunate attack in Pearl Harbor, was relatively untouched. The country was growing and was unscathed. And it actually was a source at which, you know, Europe was rebuilt and a lot of Southeast Asia. America dominated everything. It became a superpower because it had no competition, right? When we had manufacturing plants, there was no other other countries were busy rebuilding, you know, churches and roads and the devastation that had rocked them for the 6 years of World War II. And so we enjoyed that, and it resulted in significant and phenomenal American prosperity. Well, it's over. It's over. That ride we had is now over. We see significant competition in terms of how products are developed and services are deployed. the things that were our competitive advantage or just our advantage can no longer be relied upon. A product made in America can be made the same or made better in pretty much anywhere in the world. There's no differentiator now in the way in which American products and services are developed. And so when you look at sort of the economies that are moving fast and growing rapidly, you see them in places that before didn't seem possible. Brazil, right? Phenomenal speed and growth. Russia, India, China. We're starting to see Mexico emerge as a real economic power. I suspect we may see immigration from America, North America, into Mexico in the years ahead as their opportunities increase and become very attractive to us as workers, and really as a global workforce. So that we're disoriented by that. We're like, what do? We used to have this great prosperity and we used to dominate in sort of global markets, and we don't, and we're competing on the world stage in ways and being challenged in ways we haven't in the past. It does mean that American innovation has to emerge and blossom. We still do amazing things here in Silicon Valley. What attracted me to Palo Alto was the fact that it was the heart of what was going on in the world in terms of tech. We still create Google, and we still create Facebook, and we create VMware and Hewlett-Packard stuff and Cisco. We're still doing great things here, but we don't necessarily see that across the economy, right? We have interesting places where we've seen it rebounded in the car industry, for example. So we know we can do it, but it's very disorienting, right? I mean, if you're in journalism, if you're in the news business, your business has radically changed, right? Before you sold millions of newspapers, now people are not buying as many newspapers. We're seeing newspapers close all over the country. You know, if you're in the movie business or in the music business, all your content is digital and it can be copied and moves around with such ease that there's places where you just don't make any money anymore, and therefore you have to withdraw from that marketplace. You know, so there's a lot of disorientation. The good news is it's really this kind of challenge forces us to rethink who we are and what we do, and is really a great provocateur, if you like, of making America great again and helping us look for our innovation. But we have some tough days ahead. There's no doubt about it. And here in Silicon Valley, we're certainly going to do our part to make sure that we're keeping America ahead of the curve in technology. So I kind of leave you just in terms of this section of my presentation, just with the thought as you kind of leave today and you're driving back and you go back and you talk with your teams, and even when you go to the family table this evening and you kind of think about these things, how will these insights impact your future, your family's future? Because they will. They really will. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to segue, because it looks like I have about 2 or 3 more, about 5 minutes of presentation, about 5 minutes of maybe questions. And that'll keep us on track. And I know I didn't get the okay, so that was sort of the big world, the big picture. Parts of it are reflected, will surely be reflected in what we do. So it's not lost on any of us that we are in a world, and we are in public work, where we have a public that is increasingly demanding in terms of services and quality. We're seeing either, many times the revenue coming in remaining flat or just kind of trickling a little bit upward. In some places, revenue is going down, but the expenses are going way up. So we've got to really think differently about how we deliver government and how we deliver public services.